And welcome back. New York Communities for Change unites neighbors in a collective effort to cultivate community power. Their approach combines direct action, legislative advocacy, and community organizing to champion a safer and healthier New York. Joining me now to share their point of view on the matter is the public safety organizer for New York Communities for Change, James Inniss, and we thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Darren. I appreciate you taking the time to have me here.
Well, I want to have the opportunity just not just to take the time with you, but also our viewers to educate them a little bit more on the work that you guys are doing. And so for somebody who may not know about New York Communities for Change, let's give them a little overview right quick.
So we are a community-based organization. We were formerly named Acorn. If you were around in the 80s and 70s, we were a tenant organizing organization, but we've turned to more community-based organizing and legislative advocacy as well.
And when we talk about legislative advocacy, we can talk about the fact that so many times you guys have been at the forefront of really dealing when it comes to the housing issue and housing discrimination, housing challenges. When we look at the state of housing right now in New York City, how do you see it?
Bad. Well, we shouldn't say bad for housing. Affordable housing.
Affordable
right?
housing, yeah.
Now what is affordable housing, right? There's a whole AMI conversation, average median income debate happening about AMI levels for communities, right? We need to make sure when buildings are being built that affordability levels are actually affordable for the communities that the buildings are being built in, not affordable for Midtown Manhattan or Soho or something like that. So that in like New York City is a huge part of the problem. New buildings are being built with an affordability that is not affordable for me or anybody that I know, right? So those are some of the fights we have to fight. We fight them using direct action, and we fight them legislatively, going to Albany and fighting for legislation that would like protect tenants and things like that.
When we talk about gentrification, that word in New York City, do you feel that gentrification is real?
There's a line between trying to make a neighborhood better for the people who live in the community and then making a neighborhood better and then pricing it out so only people who can afford these extremely high rents can live there, right? If you're building up a community to kick out the current people and bring in a new group of people, yes, that is gentrification. But to say that there should be no improvements done to our communities, that's a falsehood in itself as well, right?
Yeah.
We have to make sure communities stay affordable for the people who were upgrading it for, who lived in that community, who've built the communities up, right? The reasons people want to move to these communities are us who've lived in the community since the 80s and the 90s, who are the backbones and the cultures of the community. So you can't kick us out and then expect to have the same experience, right? So it's a catch-22 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we hear people use the word progression, that there's progression that needs to be made. And I don't think anybody has a problem with progression being made in communities. I think it's when it's the displacement of people who have had their blood, sweat, tears, and have no desire to move or change. That's when we have to have a conversation.
You're making decisions for people, right? Based on income, and that's not American, that's not New York, and that's not the Bronx. I'll take a step back to say I'm a born and raised Bronxite. I'm from Allerton Avenue on White Plains Road. I live in the community that I grew up in still on purpose. I work in the community to build the community up because that's something that's needed as well. But I'm from the Bronx and I care about the Bronx, and we can't just have people at higher incomes moving in and displacing all of the rest of us just because it's progress, because it's not progress. It's displacement and gentrification, like you said.
Yeah, so let's get to another topic right here where we talk about our communities right now, quality of life and crime. That's a big issue. How you guys been dealing with that?
Well, I'm a public safety person, so I speak a lot about this, and I like to tell people there's two aspects to public safety. Legislative, but there's also a community aspect, right? Legislatively, we need infrastructure. We need investments into our communities. We need public schools that are not fully funded, that are extra funded, right? We need after school programs. We need social services that actually get people jobs and train people for jobs. Crime comes from poverty. It does not come from bad people, right? So we need to address poverty, and the way we address it is legislatively. But then there's also a community aspect to it, right? I'm from the Bronx, like I said. When I was in elementary school, We walked to school as kids together in third, fourth, and fifth grade, right? But it's because every parent was watching out the window and every storekeep was outside watching the kids go to school, right? That's a community, and we need to build that part as well. So it's not just a legislative thing. A lot of it is legislative. We need investments, but we also personally need to invest in our communities again as well.
Yeah. Quality of life is big and huge. I know there's a lot of work that's being done in the green area, talking also about climate campaigns. Give us a little bit of the work that's being done with climate campaigns. We've been talking about this on the show in the last couple of weeks, where really, I think, and to be honest, when we started seeing these skies change and the color of the skies change, it really started making people pay more attention to the climate issue. Of course, we've had it before, but I think now when you see the skies turn orange and the smoke in the air, people are more and more in conversation about the issues of climate change.
And the sky's turning orange and the smoke is in the air from forest fires 1,000 miles away in another country. We need to, like, that's what's going on. It's not just, oh, something is, no, it's a national and international issue. And when I speak about climate change, I like to speak to people who look like me and you and let them know we are the ones who are going to feel the effects first. You know, we do not live in these buildings with these ventilators and on these air conditioners, right? We are the ones who live in these low poverty neighborhoods who are going to feel the effects of it. So we need to be on the front lines of fighting against climate change. And something I like to tell us is fighting against climate change is a phenomenal jobs opportunity. We're going to need to turn New York City and New York State into a green state, which means we're going to have to train people in new fields, which is an opportunity for us to actually get out and get ahead and get trained in these jobs and get ahead of this. And that's another thing about building like quality of life, getting good jobs, good well-paying union jobs back into the Bronx and back into our communities, right? So we can fight on the front lines working on it, but we also have to fight on the front lines of realizing what we contribute to climate change, right? Like us every day, we are contributing to climate change. Also, the buildings that we live in here in New York City are old buildings that are really, really bad polluters. And laws are being passed, and we need to stay on top of it to make sure the laws are implemented the right way.
Yeah, James, you're a public safety organizer. That means you get out there and you get people motivated to know exactly what's going on, right? How many people are still in the dark when it comes to the issue of climate change, green, environmental justice? I think, a lot of people pay attention to the other stuff, the crime, the murders, the stealing, the MTA. But when it comes to climate change, it seems as though that's on the back burner.
So one thing I will say that makes me really hopeful is the younger generation it's there. We live in the future now. It's something I say all the time. The future isn't coming. We live in the future, but the younger generation, they are fully aware. They are literally on the front lines of this. Unfortunately, I think our communities, the communities we're from, aren't, I want to say it's not most front of mind, but we aren't the most informed on these things. We have crime to deal with. We have unaffordable housing to deal with. Like now we have to deal with another issue. And a thing you say at New York Communities for Change internally is you can't fight for affordable housing on a dead planet. You can't fight for public safety on a dead planet. It's an internal thing. Everything we do has to go back to climate change, because if the seas rise or if it's 110 degrees in Manhattan in the middle of the summer, everything else goes out the window. All of the stuff that we think we're doing goes out of the window, right? Climate change is here. It's going to be hotter in the summer. Some winters may be colder. And we have to deal with it now because our communities are the ones who live in the communities that are least prepared to deal with it.
Yeah. One of the platforms that you really deal with is the issue of economic exploitation and the fact that a lot of people can be the victim. What do you see as economic exploitation when it comes to what's happening right here in our neighborhoods, and what should we be paying attention to?
So the minimum wage is woefully low, and we like to say that in New York City and New York State it's higher than the rest of the country. Well, the rest of the country are dealing with slave wages, like literally. It's literally $7.25 is a disrespectful number to pay somebody an hour. But even here in New York City, the city with the second highest quality of life to live in, the $15 and $17 is still woefully low. And then in the Bronx specifically, We need better jobs. We need industry. The biggest industry we have are the hospital system we have in the Bronx. But we need more jobs, better paying jobs to keep Bronxites working in the Bronx and not having to commute. I commute to Brooklyn. You know, like it's not that I can't find a good job in the Bronx. I love the work that I do. It's worth the commute, but we should be able to have places in the Bronx where all Bronxites can work. Just like here in Brooklyn, Brooklyn people go Brooklyn to Brooklyn, Manhattan, Manhattan to Manhattan, Queens to Queens, but Bronxites have to go all over. We leave the city sometimes to go work. We need to actually help people in the Bronx with good paying union, if I mind to be biased enough, jobs, right? That's how we stop exploitation. Unionizing is organizing, and there's power in numbers. The biggest power we don't have the money, but we have numbers and we have people. So we need to get together and organize in order to get the things that we actually want, like higher minimum wage here in New York City.
Yeah, we talk about jobs coming, and I've talked to elected officials. Some say they're pleased with the amount of jobs that are coming to our city. Others say that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I like to go in the middle and talk about, hey, you know, you can be pleased. You can say there's still more, but it's also the quality of those jobs that are coming, because you just don't want to have low-income jobs available. In order to shift an economy, you're going to need to have a middle-class, middle-wage style of system if you're going to shift the economy and community.
Yeah, the strength of any city state country is a strong middle class, right? I keep bringing up unionizing and good union jobs because that is really the key. They say that jobs are being brought back to New York City, but what kind of jobs and jobs for who? Because some of them are really low paying jobs, and then some of them are really, really high paying jobs that New Yorkers aren't getting. They're bringing people in from out of state to get these jobs. That doesn't help New Yorkers, does it? You know, like we need to get a middle class. We need to get trades. I go back to the green economy that we need to produce here in New York State, right? If we're going to get ahead of climate change. In order to retrofit buildings, we need to train people how to do that work. That is good jobs. Those are good jobs. The Bronx, buildings in the Bronx are going to need that work just like all over the city and state. But why can't Bronxites get those jobs, right? Why can't we raise the quality of life and quality of living for our borough? And that's kind of one of the things that I'm biasedly working towards, but even the New York Communities for Change, we're working towards in all the boroughs and even Long Island where we do work as well.
You know, as I said, you're public safety organizer, getting people motivated, mobilized, knowing about what's going on. For the public out there, how can they latch on to the work of that you got going on and be a part and be a voice?
You know, I hate to do this, but social media is obviously the easiest way. You know, NY Change on Twitter and Instagram. We have an email address, newyorkcommunities .org. You can just email us at that, New York, at info dot New York Communities, I'm sorry, at .org. So you can email us there as well. You can reach out to me. My social media is JMIKEY, J Mikey. Like I said, Twitter, we are NY Change, and we're the guys in the orange shirts, guys and gals, excuse me, let me not leave anybody out, but we are the people. We're in orange shirts. We do a lot of direct action. You'll see us in Albany. You see us in City Hall. You see us here in the city doing outside of legislators' offices who are not supporting legislation we think will help their districts. And you'll see us at legislators' office supporting them who are supporting those legislations too, because it's not just about negative advocacy, right? I definitely believe in supporting those legislators and those elected officials who are supporting the people. So it goes both ways. You see us out yelling, but you also see us out celebrating people as well.
Yeah, and when you talk about elected officials, I got to get your take on this. Are they more receptive these days, knowing how the community has changed, the quality of life has changed, the issues still remain the same, and sometimes, in some cases, have gotten progressively better? They've actually changed the opposite direction coming out of COVID. What's been the response of elected officials? Do you think they have a tuned ear to the matters at hand?
So with elected officials, what it always comes down to is the voices that they hear at the end of the day. And no, they're not to their fault, but they're not walking through their communities asking people questions. They have jobs. They're in Albany or they're in City Hall. But the loudest voices are the ones that are heard. And the people, unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, who have different motives than us are the loudest, right? They're the ones who are showing up at community board meetings, and they're the ones who are calling the elected officials, moving officials one way or the other. And we need to be more vocal. That's something that NYCC and all other advocacy groups try to work on, trying to get the community to show up at community board meetings, show up at rent guideline boards meetings. I was at all three that passed recently, right? Showing up at these things matter. Like, we might not show up, the people who don't want the things we want do show up. You know, the people who want our public schools to be defunded and that money going to real estate or whatever, so have you. Those people show up at every one of these meetings. I just got off a call where about one of the climate laws that New York City needs to pass, has passed and needs to implement. Local Law 97 is about to become a big thing where real estate is showing up because it's a bill to have the buildings green, make themselves more green, basically. It passed 4 years ago. It needs to be implemented next year. And at every community board meeting, it's real estate showing up saying, hey, we don't want this implemented, instead of the community showing up saying, hey, the Bronx has the highest asthma rate in the city, state, and country. We need to stop the greenhouse gases coming through our borough, right? Like, those are the voices that need to be heard. People whose children can't breathe when there's too much pollen in the sky because we have so many Con Ed power plants and there's so much combustion from the cars coming through our borough, right? And we can't actually breathe. We need the people who can't breathe to come speak, not the people who are making money off of this happening to come speak at these events and these town hall meetings.
Yeah, a lot we can talk about, James, and thank you so much for addressing some of these issues. Glad to have you with us. James Inniss, public safety organizer, New York Communities for Change. I want to thank you so much for being with us. Good to have you, brother.
Daren, thank you for having me. BX forever. Let's go, everybody. We can fight, and we can win. We can make a better Bronx, everybody. Let's go.
That's right. We can fight and we can win.